Good morning. Thanks for coming. So we're going to talk about audio feedback and actually a little bit about video feedback, both of which Canvas allow you to do really easily. So long as you have a microphone, which most laptops come with, and a video camera, which most laptops come with. The only thing you'll run into is if you're in a lab, you might want to pick up a little video camera to use if you have a desktop computer. And those are incredibly cheap nowadays. I would suggest Radio Shack, much cheaper than Staples, and you can pick up a webcam that has audio built into it, like $29 maximum. So we'll talk a little bit first about just the background and some research that's been done on audio feedback to engage and motivate students, and then we're going to go into Canvas and give you a chance to actually do it yourselves. So that's just our workshop description. We're mainly focused, when we're talking about audio feedback in Canvas, on fully online courses. Because if you're using Canvas just to enhance a face-to-face course, we're assuming they're getting a lot of face-to-face and audio feedback from you in the face-to-face course. Hybrid too, a lot of it is just face-to-face. I can send this Prezi to all of you. There is a Dropbox folder with articles, so things that are referenced within this Prezi. You can access those articles in case you want to look through those articles yourselves, and you have access to a slightly different Prezi. I need to change this. But I'll send this Prezi out to everybody so you can get to it. So if you remember tinyurl.com, and is there any chalk over there? You can just write down the LMUKPHJ. Lamukfj. Yeah, so it's tinyurl and then that. And the other one is, for the Prezi, is NUSZEHO. ZEHO. Nužeho. That's almost Serbian. Okay. So why audio feedback? Why would we do this in an online course? One of the things we know about online learning is there are lower completion rates for online courses than face-to-face courses. You have about a 10 to 20% dropout rate for well-established online courses. New online courses and new online programs have a higher dropout rate than that. That's more like 20 to 30%. But established online courses have a dropout fail withdrawal rate of about 10 to 20%, which is actually low when you compare it to our highest face-to-face dropout fail withdrawal rates. But this is like across the board. So one of the things about online learning we know that contributes to this high dropout fail withdrawal rate is the lack of what's called social presence or personal presence in the online environment. The idea that they don't have that connection to their peers in the classroom, they don't have that connection to you and the teacher in the classroom, and so they feel like the only person they're really like letting down is just themselves. Whereas if they feel that connection to you and the rest of the class, then they have less of a less what? Less Sorry. Yeah. So we know building in social interactive ways, right, to respond to student work, to let them know that there's more of a connection, and your voice delivers so much more emotion than does a simply written word. You also know that written words are often misinterpreted. Right? So when we look at feedback itself, when we just start thinking about feedback, when students look at feedback that they receive, the likelihood of implementation of feedback goes down with the amount of effort required. So this is mainly with written work. If you're responding to any sort of written work, when they look at it, their decision matrix is how much work is that going to require. If it's a lot of work, they're less likely to do it. And of course, they're also weighing that against what's the effect on the grade. Right? So again, I'm not going to implement it if it's going to have low effect on the grade. So they're not thinking so much about what will this really do for my writing, and strongly considering everything, they're really weighing those two things. How much effort, what's the effect on the grade? And that greatly influences whether they take your feedback into consideration. So research on feedback, there's a couple of quotes from an article by Thompson and Lee that again you can get by going to the Dropbox. So when students get feedback, they're thinking of it in the context of their life, their school, their work, their home life, right? Rather than just, that paper and how to make that paper better. And while we don't want our feedback to be seen as directive, a lot of times, and I used to teach composition here, I still teach a graduate course on writing, when we make a lot of comments on the side, we think that we're giving nice, formative feedback to help them in their revision process. And we think of it as really helpful. But they often read it as being very directive and criticizing, right? And that's part of the problem with written feedback. When the students see it, and oftentimes they just see that massive comments, they see that as very negative. And that's one of the reasons that people want to move to audio feedback, is with audio feedback, the tone of your voice will convey that I don't mean this as punitive. And in research on audio feedback, that's exactly what they found. Is one, when people give audio feedback, it tends to be more global in nature. You're not going to say, you missed a T, or you need to capitalize this, or put in a period. Audio feedback tends to be more global and strategic in nature. And that's how students tended to view it as well. They thought that they received more feedback when they received the audio feedback, and they viewed it much more as conversation rather than critical judgment. And so even with really problematic papers, students felt much more positive about it and were much more likely to implement the feedback when they got audio feedback rather than written feedback. And this is true actually for both, this is not just a fully online course. These are people that just gave papers back with audio feedback in them. And for this, they were using Adobe PDFs, because you can include audio comments in PDFs. And so that was something that people were doing in face-to-face classes. So students, in many different studies that have been done, these are rough numbers, 80% felt the audio was more personal, 70% understood more of the feedback. One of the other problems with the written feedback is oftentimes when we're writing, especially margin type notes that we're writing on papers, we can be cryptic, right? It's hard to write in those little comments in Microsoft Word if you're doing or in Canvas. So several things about written feedback, right? Microsoft Word, we tend to be cryptic because it's even hard for us to see what we're writing in those stupid little comments. In Canvas, students often have trouble finding where the comments are when you use that comment section in Canvas. And then when we're writing margin notes, our handwriting may be poor, or we may abbreviate. And oftentimes students have trouble reading the abbreviations. So oftentimes they'll skip it because it just seems impenetrable to them, especially when you have students whose English is not their native language. So 70% understood more of the feedback just because it's an audio format. They felt more involved in the course because it's audio feedback, and the vast majority preferred receiving the audio feedback. But because audio feedback tends to be more global in nature, most students preferred getting both the audio feedback as well as written feedback. In other words, circling the misspellings, right, as well as giving a more general comment on the paper using audio. The other thing is that one study, and I do have to say it's only one study, found that students were 3 times more likely to implement audio feedback than written feedback. The other nice thing about this study is they showed that it wasn't just novelty. So one of the things that can happen with any study is that it's the first time that it's done, that it has a positive effect because it's new for everybody. And they followed the students over 3 semesters and were using audio feedback in all 3 semesters and found that that effect held even in the 3rd semester when they were still getting the audio feedback, so it was no longer novel. I hate the term, but I had to say it. So some people call this feedback, using video instead of audio. Now the nice thing about video and what people are doing, and they use a variety of tools. In this case, they were using Jing. So in this case, what happens is you open up the student's paper or assignment on your computer, and you take a screencast of it. So you're basically taking video of what's on the screen. And then what you can do is, as you're highlighting the paper, right, and making notes, you're talking. So it's like read aloud protocol. So you're narrating what you're doing and you're capturing it as you go through the paper. And in that case, you don't have to do written, right, and audio feedback. It's all one thing. So it's one motion for you. As you go through, you can highlight and talk about why you're highlighting it, and you can be making comments on it as you do it. And that's called video feedback. And students responded very positively for that. It's less scolding than written comments. And again, the audio comments were more like conversation. So the video feedback is, in a way, the simplest for everybody. And these are just conclusions for this section before I hand it over. So as you're thinking about using audio feedback, to sort of summarize what some of the findings are, audio feedback is great for connecting with your students, for formative feedback, which is what we're really trying for. If you want people to make revisions and to think about how they're approaching problems and learning, then the audio feedback tends to be seen that way, even though we mean written feedback to be seen that way. And it's great for sort of procedural or strategic knowledge. Written feedback tends to be better for precision editing, right? So if it's just audio without the video, or specific areas of the paper. For polishing or for summative, right? It's your final paper, you're not going to revise it, you know, here's basically what you got. Then the written feedback is probably a better way to go.
I just wanted to talk a little bit about the feedback that we got in our studies from the teachers, and a little bit about the feedback that we have here on campus. And since we've done a lot of this, I'm going to just move to the right circle, so forgive me. On my experience with working with people here who are doing feedback at this point, the most important one was the on-campus feedback we have here from 2011. I'm not sure you can still read that. I might have to bring that further in. Whoops, like I said, it was the first time I've used Prezi. Don't ever do this.
Do you want me to steer it?
Yes, I would like you to steer it. I just want to go to this very last thing right here, and then here. Mark and I combined 2 speeches that we had done in 2 different places. So this is a really important piece of feedback. I want to have you understand is that we had this on campus from 2011, and this feedback we got was from a student who was in a teaching class with Michelle Pierce, and this was their feeling about the audio feedback, that it was powerful and that it really changed as she was looking at her writing. And with all the things that Mark had said, I think it's a really important thing that you understand that this is coming from one of our students and the value that it has here. In this research that I did, if you, most of the comments that I had above were some of the things that Mark had said about audio comments having more writing, clarity to the feedback, and the tone was really helpful. Students want you to give the micro comments, the grammar, the punctuation. They really want you to give you everything on video. And I think that what Mark said about balancing what you're putting in is really important, because we're going to go and look at the teachers' comments on the research that I looked into as well. So if you, I think it's the circle right below it. And I put that all in one, yeah, this one here. So in all of the studies that I looked at, I was really interested in what the faculty had to say about it. That the training is a key factor, that the training, that you get very comfortable using the technology, and that while there's terrific benefits for students, it's not without some work on your part to deduce it. And that they felt that when the end of the game, at the end of every study, they really felt that the work on your end was worth it for the students. I thought it was really important that you understand that for an online course, which is where I was going with this, is that the way they measure how people feel comfortable is in the word immediacy, the distance between me and you, and that really gets lowered when the audio feedback is in place. People feel far more connected, they feel a part of the class, they participate more, and when you use that with other kinds of synchronous learning or other things, it really makes for a very engaging class. So one of the teachers saying that the audio feedback really is huge. You find yourself writing out the notes before you give it to them, before you record yourself, and that's part you. A lot of people went to the hairdresser, and on the hairdresser day they did their video feedback. Know that when we talk about video feedback here, we're talking about taking a picture of the paper and hearing your voice. It's not necessarily you. There are options so your face doesn't have to be there if that's not where your comfort zone is. All right. And people did say that they had to do this for like 6 to 8 months before they were just able to record as a conversation the way Mark described. And they said basically 2 or 3 classes, and they would get it down pat. The class size in here was about 15 to 20 students. So, and they were hesitant, we talked about that, and that the technology prep was really, really the key part to it. So those are the points I want to make sure there's sort of like this plus and minus, and the balance that goes involved in all of that. We're going to show you how to do the audio feedback. There's a lot of different ways that you can do it. You can add audio feedback in assignments. You can have your students add feedback to each other. And so I thought we would go into Canvas at that point and just show you how to do it. Okay? So from your computers, if you're on, we can just move right into Canvas. And then Firefox. Please use Firefox. It is the best way. You all should have a headset right next to you, and I don't know if you're familiar with using that, but there is a microphone built in on the side.
On your computers, Firefox, Chrome, Safari all work really well. I think I'm muted, sorry. On your computers, Firefox and Chrome and Safari all work well. The only reason that we're saying Firefox right now is we know that Firefox is working with Flash on the computers in this lab.
So I'm not sure if you have a class that you can use for a test. I always have a class that I can use for a test. And we'll show you how to do the audio feedback, and you can decide whether you save it in your class.
We had a couple people with computers policy.
Oh no.
I put them to sleep last night.
Oh well.
Let me know if anyone's logged in.
I can just use the course that I used in
You
the
can use
former-
any course
it
that
was
you
like
want.
a thing we
Right.
created at a workshop.
Right. You can use any course you want. We're going to have you create an assignment just so you can see how it works. Or if you have an assignment that's already there and you want to go and look where you put the feedback, we can certainly let you do that.
Remember, as long as you don't publish the assignment, the students can't see it. So if you're in a
Right.
course that you're working on right now,
So once everybody's in, we'll move forward and we will try and just set up an assignment. I'll show you what we actually have to do, and then we can try and do it all together. What I like about the audio feedback in Canvas is you don't have to plan ahead. You can just start to use it. So if you want to do it for one assignment or you want to do it for one lesson, you can just start right there. Our students appreciate the feedback, and as Mark said, that along with the written comments. They really like that once they find out where to find the comments.
make everybody's
Okay.
ready to go. Just take this first part a little slow.
Okay, so I'm on my home page in my course, and I'm going to just click on assignments on the left-hand side. And even though it's grayed out here, that's always available to any teacher in a course. So when you bring up, these are all the assignments that I have. And we're just going to quickly make an assignment up there by clicking on the blue assignment. So we're just going to add an assignment. And know that when you have an assignment, and we'll just make this be the final voice test, that way I'll know which one it is. The instructions would go in this box. And when we're just going to, you have to put something in this box. And so we're going to go to the bottom and just update the assignment. Okay, we don't have to do anything else about that at this point in time. If we want to put something in online, you can actually make this be online and put in text entry or file uploads. We're going to put in text entry if you want to put that there so that we can actually record and have something to correct, because you're going to have to submit your own assignment. All right. Now this assignment isn't available to students until we publish the assignment. And unfortunately, if you're in a live class, the students would see that. But you can at least see how the process would work. I'm going to publish my assignment. And then for the sake of this class, I'm going to become a student and submit my assignment by clicking on settings in the bottom on the left-hand side. You have the ability to be the student view up at the top on the right for your entire class. And then, whoops, I forgot to do one thing. I was playing with a new hide everything system, and it hides everything. I just had to add it to my system so I can see my class.
Does the course itself need to be published?
The course would need to be published for a regular student, but for your student, it should be able to be seen. So I just added that to modules, and my course should be able to see the final voice test that I have. So from a test student perspective, you should be able to do that.
Okay, can you just walk through the whole thing again, because I think we got lost.
I can see that. All right. So in your course, if you have an assignment, you can take an assignment. And I'm going back to my home page. You can create an assignment if you don't have one. And I created an assignment down here called Final Voice Test. And if you need to create one, you click on the blue assignment button up here. And you have to name it, and you have to put something inside here. So, but in final recording, put in a assignment, and down the submission type, just for today, I'm going to put the text entry as my online submission. So the submission type should default to online, and I'm just clicking on text entry to make it faster for me, because our focus is on what we do with it after it's been submitted, and I'm going to update my assignment. Now in my course, the only way for the students to get to the information is it has to be listed on the modules. So I have to add my assignment to my modules. So I'm just going to the top of module and adding my assignment so that when I become a student, I will be able to submit. And now that it's added, I'm going to publish it. And then I'm going to go to settings and become the student. And so when you click on settings, which is the bottom on the left, and then click on student view, which is the top on the right, you become the student, and you'll be in student mode. You'll see your test students up in the corner, and down at the bottom you have this leave the student view. And my course is locked, so the only way to get to the information is by clicking on modules. And then when I click on the final voice test here, I will have the ability to submit the assignment. If a student says they can't submit, this is just because we didn't select an entry. But in this case, we're all set to go, and the text entry is here. And I have the option at this point in text entry to write or record. All right? That's really important. So if you're having people do recordings, you can do that. But in this case, I just wanted them to write something in. And I'm going to be very small. I'm not going to write very much, because this is just a sample. And I'm going to submit my assignment. Because then okay. and I get the note that it's been submitted, and I can go and see the submission details, but I'm done and I would like to see what it's like to correct it. So I'm going to the bottom right and click on Leave Student View. And now you don't know that you're back to your real view except that your name shows up in the top right hand corner and that you have the full listing of options on the left side. So in this case, I'm going back to my assignment. By clicking on Assignments on the left, go find my Final Voice. And I have one submission, so I can go to SpeedGrader now. And it's in SpeedGrader that we really wanted to spend our time. To do the audio feedbacks, you really are going to have the paper, whatever it is that they've submitted here, the name of the student here, and the ability to do comments is way down in the bottom right-hand corner. You'll see it says attach, and then there's a paper, and then there's a little circular thing, which is supposed to be like a webcam. Really what you want to do and click on that, and it activates the ability to make a media comment. Now, where we are here, we have two comments, two options here. The little round one is the video cam. The one below it, which people are telling me looks like an acorn, that's just the audio. So if you want me to just see the audio and just hear what you have to say, they're not going to see your paper, you just click on the audio. On these computers in this room, you'll have to click on allow. You may or may not have to do that on your computers. If you have a laptop, it might automatically come right on. If you want them to see what's on your video camera on your laptop, it'll automatically pick up you. You can show them how to look at the page, all right? But once you've clicked on one, and I'm just going to do the audio comment, you want to make sure you have your headphones on.
So what we're going to do is, since I've been watching the screens and nobody's actually where you are,
Oh,
so I think finish this and then let's give them free time to just
Yes.
do it.
I just want to ask a question.
Yeah.
How do I do this in unpublished? I can't do it in unpublished.
Yeah, I think it has to be
It has to be
published.
published.
Yeah.
And the whole-
you could only do it in a you could do it in an unpublished class as a student.
No, they don't want to publish the assignment because they're in classes that are
Oh,
live now.
all right.
You can publish
All
an
right.
assignment, but you can just put, like, not make it available.
Okay, that's a good idea.
You could make it not have a due date later. You could mute the assignment so they don't see it.
Make the assignment available after
Yeah,
December.
but if you put it,
Right.
you know,
But if it's not available, the
you know,
student
and
can't
just
get
give
to
a
it.
sign,
Right.
ignore this assignment.
Right.
I can't get in there. That's
Right.
what I want.
Yeah,
How about
that
in
is-
the
but
math
can you
class?
get into
You
it?
can't get into
So
it.
Ken, if it's also not available, can you submit anything as a student? That's the,
No, but you can mute it. If you mute it, then the assignment will go on, and no notification of the assignment being turned on will go to the student.
But if they have an old course from last semester?
They could do it in the low course from last semester, one from summer, you could do it in there,
Yeah.
because the students won't get that information anymore. So here's the recording. And just so you know, I put the microphone way up here because I'm loud. But you really want it up like here, so you don't catch everything that you're doing. So when you start to do the recording, you're gonna be like, I don't like how it sounds, it catches every little thing, I have a slight lisp, it shows up. If you have it up here, then it's gonna capture words, or you have it down here. Any other
But
points?
At home, you don't have something like that, or you think you need something like that?
It adds to the quality,
Okay.
because if not, I'm gonna be listening to the dog bark or the refrigerator sound. There's always a hum, and this cuts down on it a little bit. And so when you hit allow, it will take time in this lab. That's going to take a little bit of time to do.
Just to see how this works.
And then it should just go.
I had to click it a few times in order for it to work.
Yeah, well, that's.
Yeah. And it's a lab, and so you're going to have to be thinking about it quite a bit.
We can edit this part out.
Thank God.
Well, here, we'll
So here we go.
give you time to edit it in a second.
When you get it to the point where it's turned on, you find yourself with that big red button. The red button will start to record, and there'll be a spot that shows up after that that's a square, and that's what you'd stop with. So your mouse stays in the same place. So you click it on to record. You're going to see the green lights on the side that shows you how loud I am. And then when I'm ready, I just click stop. And what you can't hear is that it's playing back on this, and we can't have it both ways right now. And if I want to keep it, I just press save. If I want to re-record because it just sounded like I was a little angry at the person or something like that, I can just press the red button again. What'd you say?
That's the tone I'm going for.
Unless that's the tone you want. And then when I hit save, the recording will find its way right there, and you can see right up here.
And you can always delete it if you listen to it.
You can delete it if you listen to it. I usually like to listen to it before I put it up there and make sure it's close to what I want.
We're going to pause here and just let you figure out whether you can go into a course in the summer and give feedback to somebody just to record. You can record it and delete it right away. Or whether you want to set up an assignment in a current course and mute it. But we just want to give you a chance to at least click through and see where this is located and how to do it.
We had one student, teacher who used a student who had is no longer active in their class.